Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's lesson. My name is Wes. The channel is Interactive English. If this happens to be your first time here, please let me know. Write to me in the chat or in the comments. Write your name. Tell me where you're from. Very happy to meet new people and hear from new people. And of course, if you want to improve your English, if that's why you're here, please subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that like button so that you will learn about future lessons. Today, well, actually, the very first thing I want to do, I do want to give a few hellos to some people who are here. Great, excellent to see so many members and patrons and Speak Up students. Awesome. Thank you guys for being here. Hello, Vicky, Gustav, Gertrudis, Lolly. Great to have you guys here with me. And to Kayao, hello, Sleepwalker, Rosalinda. Thank you guys so much for joining me. As we go through, I'll try to acknowledge some other comments. Today, I just want to share with you some books that I think are great for learning English. And the very first thing that I want to premise this with is that all the books that I'm going to share with you, the books that I'm going to talk about, it's just my opinion. This is my experience with these books. Everybody is a different type of learner. Just because maybe I like a book doesn't mean it may work for you. And if you find a book useful, that may or may not work for somebody else. So again, this is all just my opinion, my experience with this. But one reason why I am doing this lesson is because I think this is also a great opportunity for you to learn from each other. Because what I want you to do is, as we talk about some of these books, if there is a book that's related to the topic that I'm speaking about, if you have a book that you think has been great and very helpful to you, please write that in the comments and I'll try to make a mention of it so that we can share and learn from each other. Because of course there are many books out there that I'm unfamiliar with or that I haven't used in the classroom. So again, it's a great way to learn from one another. Now, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the first book that I have that I want to talk about. Some of these are also kind of I think would be kind of relevant for teachers, especially this first book. So other books are going to be for like maybe if you're learning on your own, if you're learning by yourself. But Compelling Conversations. This, I would say, is a speaking book. If there are any other books out there that you have used to help you improve your speaking or practice speaking, throw those down in the chat and I will try to look for them and make a mention of it. I told you that this one is one that I've used in the classrooms, and all this really is, and I said I think it's probably geared more toward English teachers, is that it's a book of just questions. And it takes there are so many different topics, whether it's like restaurants, travel, environment, and all it is movies, TV. And it just has a topic and it just lists probably about 50 questions for each topic. So that's why I said it can be very useful for teachers if you're in the classroom and you're trying to think about, okay, this is the topic. What are some questions I could ask the students to have them engage in conversation and talk to each other? This is just a good book to reference that can help you really kind of get the creative process going about, okay, what are some questions that I can ask about this topic? I guess if you want to use something on your own, you could just try to look at these questions, try to answer them. But I think this book is probably more for teachers in the classroom. The other thing I would say, again, we're talking a lot about books in this lesson. Some of you may prefer to learn using books. Others of you, again, we're all different learners. Others may just prefer to watch videos on YouTube. Others may take actual lessons in class and have discussions. And then, like I said, many of you might use books to try to improve, to try to practice. It's very common. So as far as speaking goes, especially if you are an English teacher out there, because I hear from quite a few English teachers in the comments, this is a good book as far as thinking of questions to engage students in a variety of conversations, compelling conversations. I haven't seen any books about speaking, so I'm just gonna move on to the next part because I don't. I think with speaking, you're probably not going to you're not going to find too many books out there. I think often because again, you think about speaking, it's not something that you may use a book for unless it's for kind of like overall, where you have a book for like speaking, reading, writing. I guess I put this kind of related to speaking. Don't be fooled by the title because again, don't nobody should feel like they have to speak English like an American. Not at all. This is a book of idioms. And that's, I think, why they chose this because these are idioms that I think are more common in the United States, which is why it's titled Speak English Like an American. Though now, I think when it comes to speaking, because idioms can be rather informal, and I think they're quite common in spoken English, this is a book that has like a bunch of idioms, but the reason why I like this book is because the way that it teaches the idioms, it's all dialogue. So they tell you some of the idioms and then they give you this sample like dialogue, some situation between like the mother, the father, the son, the daughter, and it just shows their conversation so that they're using the idioms in context. And I think that's so important when you're learning idioms. You're not just learning the meaning, but you're trying to figure out, okay, how to use this in the correct context so that I'm using the idiom correctly. And that's one reason why I like this idiom book in particular is because it really teaches the idioms through these different dialogues and situations. And then at the back of the book, it lists all the idioms and the meaning as well. So this, I think, when it comes to idioms, even though there are so many books out there for learning idioms, if you guys have an idiom book, write it in the chat. Let me know. But I think this is a good one so that you can see how the idioms are used in context. Let's see. Lolly says, yes, for watching your videos. Thank you, Lolly. I'm glad that you enjoy the lessons on YouTube. So Zain Brahim, I just saw saying the English teacher suggestion, the best books I'm using in class. So that's what this lesson is. So Zain, I'm maybe mispronouncing it. I just talked about like for speaking, this is a good conversation starter book. If you're talking about idioms, then I like this book. But again, I think these are more idioms that would be more common in the United States. So it's kind of rather isolated in that regard, which again is why it's titled Speak English Like an American. It's focused more on idioms that people would use in the United States. So just keep that in mind. Let's see. Or Gustav said, I talk to my wife in English all day, live in an English speaking country. Excellent. Yes, that's always a good way. I'm sure you probably, Gustav, you probably hear quite a few idioms that they might even mention in this book being in the United States. Let's look at, somebody, Jatina asked, which book is best for a beginner? I'll get into that a little bit. I don't know if this is really a beginner book because I feel like idioms, you're kind of getting into more as part of vocabulary. Idioms would be more, I think, intermediate, like advanced, and you're trying to learn these different phrases that are kind of unique idioms. So this, I would not say is a beginner book right here. But let's move into something which I think is very common. One last thing. When we talk about this, this is more related to vocabulary. And I don't know what your guys' opinion would be about this book. This is just from my own personal experience. The book is 501 English verbs. And the reason why I'm putting this up here is because when I was learning Spanish, it was the same book, but for Spanish, 501 Spanish verbs. And all it is just, that's what it is. It's just a book of verbs. And it gives you the verb and how it's conjugated, examples as to how people would use it. And for me, it helped with my own like self-study. Because when I was learning Spanish, I took some classes but I was also trying to learn it on my own. And this is one that I would use mostly for building vocabulary. And I would just read through it, look at the verb and see how it was conjugated, how they used it, and it really helped me. And the one thing I would say about this is that it's definitely more like rote learning. And when I say rote learning, which some people it may work for some people, maybe not for others. Rote learning is more like memorize, 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 memorize. Because that's what I would do with this book. I would try to learn a verb and try to memorize how it's used. And over time, I hope I was getting a little more comfortable with it. I think one of the challenges with rote learning is that when you're just trying to memorize stuff, sometimes it can be easy to forget if you're not able to make some connection with the word or phrase and associate it with something else. But as far as rote learning goes, and you're just trying to memorize and learn new words for vocabulary, I think this can be helpful. And the other thing that I would say about verbs is that I think verbs are really like the heart of the sentence, because they tell us the time, like when something is happening. It really they can be very descriptive to help people put a picture in their mind. So I think learning verbs, not only different verbs and what they mean, but how you're going to use them grammatically, I think can be very useful if you're going to use the present tense, the future, the past tense, the perfect tense. So that's why I put this up here more as a vocabulary book and not as much of as a grammar book. That's my opinion. And the reason why I threw it up there is because, like I said, I used this when I was learning Spanish. And yeah, I thought it was kind of helpful. Let me go back, check some of the, the comments. Yes, exactly. Sleepwalker mentioned, I think when I was talking about the idioms, that many different English-speaking countries have their own slang and idioms. That is absolutely true. So that last book I told you was, I think definitely that's more for idioms in the United States. Again, Adrian says, yeah, I'd like to learn more books about English slang or idioms. Not sure if I'm catching on to these a little late here. This is a book if you're looking for English, American slang and idioms. Let's see. I'm going to get into some more books with some grammar specifically. Vicky and Gustav, we have 501 English verbs and 501 German in digital form. Awesome, excellent. Hopefully, I don't know. Let us know if you have found this useful or helpful. Well, he says rote memory is really important. Absolutely. I think I think again, I think a learning approach in which you're like they talk a lot about an eclectic approach where you're trying to teach learners using a variety of styles, because I think rote learning can be very effective for some, and others they may need more than that that memorization. Maybe they need to be like more kinesthetic learning, get out of the chair and stuff like that. But I think this is a good one for like memorizing and just learning a bunch of different ones, because there's so many different verbs out there. Also, it's just a great way to build your vocabulary. Let me move on. I feel like I'm kind of spending too much time on each book right now. So let's get into some grammar. And I think these grammar books, I think a lot of them can really be used for self-study, because it'll talk about the grammar and then give you some different exercises so that you can practice on your own. And then you can check to see whether or not you made the correct sentence. So English grammar and use, I think, is a good one if you're trying to learn English on your own. And I think that's how they've really developed the book, so that keeping in mind that, okay, the person who's going to buy this book is trying to learn English on their own. They're trying to study grammar on their own. And that's how they've laid it out. So it's very easy to understand, like, okay, introducing the topic. This is the grammar we're going to talk about. Here are some examples. Here are some activities that we want you to do. So it's really easy to follow in that regard if you're looking for a grammar book. I've also said that I think another great way to learn grammar is just to read, and read storybooks or read articles online. And the more you read, you're learning grammar passively, because you're seeing how the correct grammar is used. This, again, these books right here, like this one, is more active learning because it's giving you the grammar, but then you have to do some exercises or activities after you learn about it, and then you can check the answers. So I think this is a good book for grammar. Let's see what else we got here. Adrian says another book where to learn slang than that blue book. Apart from that blue book, I don't know. That's a good question, Adrian. No, that's the one that I have. That's the one that I used. Let's see. How can I find the book? Zane asks how compelling conversations. Some of these books, if you just do Google searches online, you can find them. I didn't leave any links down in the description, like taking you to an Amazon page, or I know everybody shops at different places. Some people would buy books online. Others you may even go to a bookstore. So I just wanted to give you these titles that if you wanted to, you could do, like for this one, just do a Google search for English grammar in use, and you're going to find different options for buying this book if you were interested in it. Let's see. So I have Lolly has these books. Awesome. Excellent. That's great. The next one I have, this is another grammar book. And so this one I'd say is really good for self-study. This one I think is good in the classroom if you're a teacher and you're looking for a grammar book to teach a class of students. You could also use this one on your own as well. This is Understanding and Using English Grammar. This blue one is for, I think this is their advanced grammar. They have two other books, two different versions. I think the red one is for beginner and the gray one is more for intermediate. So you can find it at different levels. It's written by Betty Azar, Betty Azar is pretty well known in grammar circles. She's written, I think, a variety of books. But I've really enjoyed using this one in the classroom because it lays out the grammar in different ways. So it's not just like, here's the grammar, here is your writing activity, like write it down. It gives grammar exercises with reading. There's parts for speaking as well, so that if you're in the classroom with students and say, okay, let's do, here's the grammar, but let's practice it speaking. It also has some activities that you can do with that, which I think is wonderful. So it's not just more for like on your own, which would be this one, where here's the grammar, here's practice some activities, would be like, okay, wide ranging. And that's why I said I think this one is good for the classroom. Carne, 282, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Says, I've been learning a lot of grammar for writing recently. I'm curious how accurate are writers grammatically correct? Like, are you talking about, like, I guess how often, like, if these writers are grammatically correct when they're writing, like, articles? I think, honestly, whenever you're writing, I think grammar mistakes are fairly common. I was reading an online article just yesterday, and I noticed a grammar mistake. And of course, these businesses, some of them have editors, and sometimes they still make a mistake. Or I'm sure some of you may have read a book, and even a book that's been published, and you might find a slight grammar mistake. So I think it definitely happens. I notice whenever I write something, and even the last lesson that I did, somebody had found a mistake, and it was like, yes, good eye. I always rewatch the videos, or even as I'm writing something, I reread it, and still at the end, there's still like a mistake. Sometimes it is a grammar mistake. It's like they're so hard to avoid. Let's see. Vicky Gustav, his 9-year-old daughter, still speaks German better than I do. I guess nothing beats a native speaker. Okay, yes, true. So yeah, I told you I'm trying to give you two different options with the grammar as far as like self-study. This would be more like a classroom approach, but you could use this one on your own as well. Any book for writing? Yes, I'm working our way toward writing. So far, just to recap, you guys have just been joining us. We have this book, which I talked about for speaking and questions. This one, idiom book, but specifically idioms in the United States. This is for like vocabulary, building your vocabulary with a bunch of verbs. this grammar, self-study grammar book, more classroom grammar book, and now, well, before writing, this is a reading book. One thing I will say about reading, of course, you're probably thinking like, wait, why do I need a book teaching me about reading when I could just read? And of course, that's actually what I would recommend that you do is if you want to read, find something that you are interested in, some topic, whether or not it's like fashion or cars or food, and then use that, read articles about that. That I think is the best thing that you can do. Um, Oh, Vicky, thank you so much. Awesome for the super chat. I really appreciate it. All right, yes. Oh, you just found out you get here. Yeah. The super chats, yeah, it's available. Like, it's not, I'm not really honestly too familiar with how it works. It's not something I've really mentioned or talked about a lot because I'm not sure exactly what everybody sees on their screen, but I really appreciate it. Thank you. Uh, for reading, though, this is a book, What a World. I've used it in the classrooms, and all it's real stories about things that are going on around the world, topics. It could be things that are historical. It could be some that are kind of related to current events or like sporting events, festivals, traditions, places. There are many different things, and all it's a very short reading, and they then give you some comprehension. There's some vocabulary, but then there's also some comprehension questions to see what you understood. So that would be, I think, the main argument for buying a reading book, is because then you're making it an active exercise, because you would read something and then you'd have some questions that you need to answer, or perhaps there's some like vocabulary from the reading and it wants you to put it in context. So I think that can be very useful as far as improving and developing your reading skills in any way if you're making it a more active exercise. Because again, if you're just reading something and just learning about it, reading is a passive activity, which I think is wonderful. But if you're looking for like a reading book that would give you some active exercise, like discussion or questions after you read, then I like What a World. That's just me. These current events. The next book is we're talking about pronunciation. I know somebody asked about writing. We're getting to writing, even though I think I just have one book mentioned for writing. Well Said is a pronunciation book that I've used in the classroom. I really like the way that this is laid out, where it really breaks it down, talking about the individual sounds, consonant, vowels, and how to make the sounds. It gives you some examples, words, phrases that you can say. But then it also goes a little deeper into other parts like intonation, emphasis, connected speech, different parts of connected speech. So this is a great book for the classroom, and I think it could also be used like on your own as an individual learner if you're looking for some type of pronunciation book. And again, like I said, everybody's different. Many of these resources, like if we're talking about pronunciation, you can do searches online and find different sites talking about pronunciation of certain sounds that could be helpful. So it's not necessary that you buy a book or that you use a book. Everybody's different. Some of you may prefer that, but this, I think, is a good book, pronunciation, that I've used. Another one, which I've also liked and I've used in the classroom, and it's very similar. I found them to be very similar in the way that they approach pronunciation, and again, they lay it out with the individual sounds, some how the air flows in and out of your mouth, how you should position like your mouth and your tongue. Clear Speech is another good book that gives you a lot of that same information, and also talks about intonation, emphasis, word stress. They give a lot of information about pronunciation. You really get into the weeds on pronunciation, and that is a phrase, if you haven't heard. If you get into the weeds on some topic, it's an informal expression it's an idiom that means you're getting detailed about some topic. So these pronunciation books, you really get into the weeds when it comes to pronunciation. It dropped. Okay. All right. Sorry if that sorry if that kind of dropped and it picked back up. Always experiencing some technical difficulties here in Budapest. But as I'm sure some of you at home, I imagine you can relate to some of these internet technical difficulties that I'm talking about. So anyway, yes, I was talking about effective academic writing. There are books for kind of more beginners, intermediate, advanced. This is book 2. So I think this book is more for intermediate learners. But they, as far as academic writing is concerned, they lay out kind of from the very beginning about like the structure of a paragraph, topic sentence, supporting sentences, conclusion, and then kind of go into building an essay and putting that together and how that should be structured. They also talk about like useful words and phrases like transitional words to move from one idea to the next. So it really gives a lot of details about how to form, if you're doing academic writing for university or whatever. It gives you a lot of great information about how you should structure your writing, and it could be very helpful. So this is my suggestion for writing. If you guys were wondering about, oh, what about a writing book? Somebody had asked about that. And then, all right. This is one other book that I kind of wanted to highlight and talk about. It's called Presenting in English, and it's about giving presentations. So this one is more related to business English. I know some of you out there are learning English for work or for a job. Maybe you might have to give presentations, and that's what this is about, like kind of structuring the presentation. So it's similar in a way, similar to writing, because I think you're giving a presentation. Same with academic writing. You're going to use more formal language. It's going to be more structured. So a lot of that can be related. So this also is talking about forming the presentation. What are some words that you're going to use to transition from one idea to the next? But then it goes into other details that are more specific about giving a presentation, like your introduction, how to hook the audience. What are you going to say at the very beginning to grab people's attention? Or how are you going to answer questions at the end of the presentation, and what you should do, and some strategies about that. So if you're somebody who you're trying to learn English for work or business, and you think you might have to give a presentation, this is a good book for that. So again, these are just books that I have experience with. I'm sure some of you are familiar with these books. Maybe you've used them. Maybe they've worked for you. Some of them, maybe you didn't have a good experience with them. But again, a lot of this is just opinions. There are so many different books out there to choose from when it comes to learning English. So thank you guys for joining me. If you like what we do, there are links down in the comments, down in the description. If you would like to become a member or a patron, check that out. Of course, I saw many of you amazing members and patrons today: Vicky, Gustav, Lolly, Gertrudis, Takayao, some Speak Up students as well, Juliana, awesome, trying to give some last minute shout outs. But yeah, and what I would say is to wrap things up, if there's another book that you would like to recommend that you have found really helpful, please write that in the comments. Let other people know. They say sharing is caring, because a book that has been very useful for you, I think somebody else could get a lot of great use out of it as well. So please write a message in the comments. Tell me about a book that you have found very helpful and useful. And that's good for me to know as well. Like, as far as learners telling me like, oh, this is a book that was really useful, then that's like a book that I want to find out more about. Maybe I'm going to go buy it. because I'm always interested in like how these books are teaching English. It's always, there's so much to learn when it comes not just to learning English, but also teaching it as well. Always trying to get better and better. So thank you guys for being here. Juliana, Esther, Gertrudis, Vicky, Gustav, Sleepwalker, Lali, Anjali, Judith, Bird2YK, hello. Raul Garcia, Kareem, Maggie, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed the lesson. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Don't forget to tell me what book you have really enjoyed, and I will see you next week for another lesson. So long.